This is the most makeshift fucking team I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, man.
Buddy's tripping over the lights. The other guy can't get the friggin' cam going.
We only have rented gear. All the mics are ours, though. It's weird, scraping together fucking all your gear and being like, yeah, we could probably do this. Your mic's more expensive than mine, though, so your voice will sound good.
Good. It's one of the stipulations before I agree to do any podcast. I say I will take the more expensive mic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and you're not getting... paying you might be a bit, delayed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like never, might be never.
It's quite a delay.
Oh, right. This is not going to be out for a while.
Okay.
I'll probably ask you eventually if you have anything to promote, but it can't be like, oh, I'm at a show tonight.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I'll just promote the Art Loft show.
Yeah, for real. Fuck, man. Well, thanks for coming.
Are we rolling?
I don't know. Fucking, we rolling? He never tells me.
Okay.
But it's good to have you. I wanted to ask you first and foremost, how the fuck do you live at a venue where every week you have strangers till 4 or 5 in the morning?
FOMO. No, I don't know. I like it. It's pretty easy. I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time, most of my 20s.
Yeah. When did you get into stand-up?
Stand-up I've been doing for about 2 years.
Really?
Yeah.
That's it?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
When did you is that when you started the Art Loft too?
Yeah. Well, when you're new, no one wants anything to do with you.
Right. Yeah.
And you're bad. For good reason. You suck when you start. Most people.
Yeah.
Well, everyone. So when you're new in town, you're like, hey, can I get on your show? And everyone, when there's a circle of people and you got to go up to get in there and be like, oh, I'll poke my head in. They just kind of close off the circle. And so you just stand there like a moron being like, hey, fellas. But
what you guys talking about?
So then that was the genesis for that. I was like, oh, well, if I start my own show, I can book myself.
Hey, not just a pretty face.
Exactly. And so that helped excel my abilities because I had unlimited stage time.
Right, and you just day one, you were.
I was brutal for quite a while. I would say the first 6 months it was pretty hard. I've seen some of those tapes, but
how many shows did you do before you started, your own venue?
Maybe 10 or something, maybe 5, 10.
Because if I may say, you're very good at stand-up, and it makes me think a lot about the differences between people like you and people like me, right. Because you have to have a crowd in order to practice. Whereas a musician, I can just, like I usually do, just look in the mirror and play for hours.
Do you have to do it in front of the mirror?
Into my eyes. You don't have to, but
I think most people don't.
I prefer. Well, I mean, jury's out on that.
Sure.
But you need an audience in order to get feedback, right?
Yeah.
Because music does not require.
If it works. Sure. Because you can't. The other thing too is that's the only way to even to test it on a friend. It's not that reliable, It's a good start. If you tell a friend a joke and they laugh, it's okay, I'll try that on stage. But that still doesn't mean,
Right, because you're talking to way more people.
Right, and the whole setting is different, and the expectations are higher, and everything else.
Do you ever feel do you treat the audience as one person, or do you try and is that always in your head that you're trying to touch a lot of different people at once?
I don't treat them like one person. I definitely try to make eye contact with as many people as I can. That goes a long way.
Yeah.
And a little showbiz trick, is that when you look at someone, when you make eye contact with an audience member, whatever their face is the face of the crowd. So that's all you have to worry about. So if they're smiling or if they look like they're on board, so is everyone. Because when you look at them, you sort of they at least feel the room, they feel everyone, even though everyone's not looking at them, they don't even know I'm looking at them, the rest of the room. But when they see me look at them, they're like, oh man, everyone's probably looking at me right now. So they embody the energy of the room.
Oh, wow. So okay. So it's a two-way street.
So if they're looking at you it's okay, time to wrap that joke up, But if they're smiling or they look engaged, then it's kind of alleviating for you because you're like, oh, it's probably everybody.
How do you deal with the people that? This is a selfish question I want to know. How do you deal with the people that aren't into it? maybe vocal about being not into it, you know?
That doesn't happen that often. It's pretty rare that someone, like, you're talking about a heckler?
You got a mad chill room, though. Your room's super chill.
Yeah. But even outside of that, like that, I think that's one of those things that people think happens a lot more than it does, because, like, if especially if something's taped, you know, and a comic gets a heckler, it's like that goes on YouTube and that gets a lot of views or whatever. So then people think that's like a regular occurrence, but it's not that regular.
Right.
Usually, like, the comic will initiate a conversation. You know, they'll be like, "What do you think?" or whatever, or they'll sort of engage them first. It's not too often that people will speak. I mean, you might get someone being like, or, you know, like they'll groan or something. But it's, you know, I think that you want to ignore those if you can. You got to take the high road and just keep trucking. Although that's hard, and I actually don't do that often. I'm like, right. Like, groan. But I would like to do less of that, because it does halt the show, you know, and it's like, ultimately it is one person who grounds. So if everyone else is still into it, you know, you got to stick to the crowd. Right.
And I think a good way that I've seen a lot of comics deal with it, and I've seen you deal with, is that you just kind of immediately go back to funny and just try to be funny.
Right. Yeah.
I've seen a lot of comedians that try and make it now I'm going to win the audience against this person.
Right.
Excuse me. And it never seems to go very well.
No. It's because it's like the dynamic is off, you know. It's like you have a mic and they don't. So you got to tread lightly, even if you're... Like, an audience member have to say something pretty rude for you to say something even kind of rude back. You know what I mean? Like, so... But... lots of times it's easier just to be like, "Oh, okay," or, you know, just some little thing that's like, I'll acknowledge it because I can't not say something, but I'll just do it quickly and show the audience that I'm in tune with them, but then get back to the joke, like go back into the joke. Mm-hmm. But you have to trust the audience. Like, they are the judge. Like, there's no way around that. So when people are like, I don't get, there's a terrible audience tonight, I'm like, they weren't terrible to everyone. You know what I mean? So you have to, and it hurts. Like, it does hurt your, not just your ego, but like there's certain bits that you will find yourself really attached to, and you're like, even though they don't work, so you'll try them like again and again, and you're like, no, this has to.
There's something you see in there,
right? But usually, more often than not, you end up just dropping it over time. You know, it's like, it really isn't. Sometimes you got to reword it, or sometimes you can you let it sit for a while, put it on the shelf, and then bring it back when you're in a different mood on a month later, and it can work. But But generally, they are your judge, so you can't really. It's the same to play into the back of the room. It's like, you can do it, and I've done it, but, you know, and it's kind of fun. Like, you know, sometimes, like, if you're bombing, or like not just me, but other comics, we all play to the back. Like, I'll play the comics in the back,
right? Yeah,
just sort of like stick it to them, and they'll all like howl in the back, and be sort of a folk hero amongst the scene. But it's also like, you know, you do that at your own peril.
Yeah, because you have to show, and you always have at least 5 comics in the room, probably more than that, of course.
More,
So. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that too with the more, what would I say, more arty comics, the ones that aren't really just doing regular stand-up stuff, but do more of a bit or a routine, that they get a lot of backroom laughs. You know?
Yeah, right. Well, the other thing too is, like, the more immersed you are in the scene and stand-up or whatever, or like, you don't have to be a comedian, but the more like you obsess about it, you tend to like more esoteric stuff, right? Like, because it's just like, you know, same if you love music, you'll start off listening to bands on the radio, and the more you get into it, the more you like stuff that's abnormal. So it's the kind of thing that's like, it's kind of bound to happen, but you also want to remember that, like, you know, 30% of the audience, this is probably their first time at a stand-up show. So you have to keep that in mind, that if you're going to go on like this very esoteric rant or whatever, like do some sort of super niche, like, avant-garde joke, that not everyone's going to get it. In fact, most people won't. So you kind of want to have something that's like universal, or like stands the test of time. Like, it's sort of like how Norm Macdonald on his new podcast, like, you know how at the end the jokes are all like so ridiculously cheesy and not funny. They're like jokes from like the 30s. Like, I think they're funny, but I've been following him for a long time.
They're funny because they're jokes written on a piece of paper. That's
right, and they're just like, you know, what's the worst thing about being a lone wolf? Like, you don't have a partner for the 3-legged wolf race. You know, like, it's so ridiculous. But I don't think he would have done that at the start of his career, right? Like, that's something he can do now that he sits comfortably, and it's like, well, if you're watching my podcast in my 50s, and then you'll like this. But I think he wouldn't be doing jokes like that when he was on SNL, when he still had a lot to prove. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think he had to prove that before he can get to the comfortable
exactly.
place where he can just be an esoteric comedian?
Sure. And well, you see that even with like, you know, if you're going to do a bit that's like raunchier or just generally going to be a little bit more controversial. Like you got to put that later on. You got to have to get everyone on board first before you can get into that. Like you're not going to open with like some joke that's about, you know, whatever, you name the topic, but
kidding.
You want to start with something light and be like, I'm just here to play.
Right, and you drop them in.
Yeah.
It's like jazz, man.
It's like jazz,
That's
baby.
like jazz. You got to hit those wrong notes at the right time.
Yeah, right. And sometimes it's like jazz. Like, you know, when I think it was Miles Davis said, if you hit the wrong note, hit it again.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's, and you kind of do that in stand up too. It's like, oh, you don't like you say the bit, no laugh, say it again. At least try it one more time, and then sometimes you get the laugh.
Yeah, what a strange art form, man, that you have to deal with, because you're like playing, like your instrument is a crowd, you know?
Yeah.
And you're playing the crowd, and you have to be giving what they're receiving and also be receiving how they're receiving what you're giving simultaneously. And jazz musicians are very much like that, but more so, I guess, with each other. So with being at like a venue where you always have tons of comedians, and there's always like, you know, you don't just host like a one guy every night. You're not just a venue and a bar or whatever. You have like essentially a 5-person lineup every night. So do you find like that it builds this community of comedians being like, do you guys ever get together afterwards and be like, oh, this you should do this before you say that?
Oh, yeah.
Set it up.
Oh, we're doing that all the time.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, you're not going to necessarily do it with a comic you don't know too well, just out of respect, right? Like if you just met a guy that night.
Hey, man, that fucking joke you had about airplanes?
Right.
Shit.
Lose it.
You're funny though, but lose the jacket, cut your hair.
Yeah, but if it's a guy that you play with regularly, like you need that. You need that sort of back and forth of like, yeah, maybe don't open with that, and maybe put that here, or like sometimes you'll like I had a situation the night where I was talking to a girl, and I was doing her bit back to her and saying, oh, I like this line. She goes, that's not the line. But she goes, but I think that's better. Can I use that line? And I was like, oh, okay. And it was only a change of a word. So it's like that kind of stuff is good, right? Just to have that like back and forth of and even like even with my roommates, because they all work on the show, so like they, you know, I take their insight pretty seriously too, because they see all my sets, so they know like what my strengths and weaknesses are. So if they say like, yeah, I don't know if that bit's worth, you know, usually they're even pretty good. Like I'll be saying like, oh, I can't get that to work, and they're like, oh, you got better stuff. Like, don't worry about that. And you're like, oh, okay, right. You need that. You need the
right. That's a bit of perspective,
right? Sure.
So that's like breaking away from the ego in a sense, you know?
Yeah.
You're kind of breaking away from like, oh, this is my joke and I came up with this. I'm speaking as like, you know, someone who writes my music and then writes music for a lot of other people.
Right.
It's much harder writing for your stuff.
Right.
But everything you do is your stuff.
Right.
So, and you're the one that has to represent it. You don't get a band or anything like that.
But like I very recently just started watching my tapes, which I never do, which is like all the advice that comics say is like, you got to record your set and listen to it that night, and and I, like a lot of other comics I've talked to too, it's like the reason you don't do it is because it's so cringy to listen to your own, especially because it's never as funny as you remember it.
Well, and you know the setup, and you know the punchline's coming. And
it's not so much that, it's just like because your adrenaline's flowing so much when you're on stage, like you hear like in the back one guy laughing. To you, that's a big, you know, you're like, oh yeah, that was good. I think I did all right. And then when you hear it on a phone recording later, it's like it's just one guy in the back that laughed for a second, and you're like, fuck, I bombed. I thought it was, well, not like, you never don't know if you did, like, it's in the realm of, yes, you either did good or bombed. Like, you're not that delusional, but it's never as good as you'd like it to be, and often worse than you remember it. But it's so crucial to do it, because you realize everything. You realize when you're doing like all those little, you know, like nervous tics or whatever that you need to like lose and get rid of. You realize how much fat most of your jokes have, and how like that could be trimmed down. Like lots of times too, like you'll start out like I was doing this bit about having dinner with my mother or whatever, and like I did it maybe like 3 or 4 times, and it was only upon listening to it like maybe the 4th time I did it that I realized there's so much garbage in here, like just unnecessary stuff.
Dead weight.
Well, yeah, just like, oh, I went home at Christmas to see my mom, you know, I see her at the holidays. Like none of that needs to be in there. You can just say, I was having dinner with my mother the other night. Yeah. But in your head, for some reason, because you did go home for Christmas for the holidays, you feel like that's somehow necessary, but it's not really at all. Like, so you can really cut stuff down where, yeah, it's funny where you just and that's what it is. Like you listen to it and then you're like, oh yeah, there's laughs here and there's not laughs here, and anywhere there's not laughs, like unless it's really an important part of the setup, then it's, you know, you don't need it. But you'll only figure that out from listening to it and trying it a few times.
You got to know when to cut.
Right.
Yeah, man. I wanted to ask you about the state of comedy now. I feel like this is probably the biggest time for stand-up comedy, but on a large scale.
Sure.
Because it's like the most Netflix specials I've ever seen in my life.
YouTube and everything, yeah.
You can't watch them fast enough.
Right.
But it's also like a really tough time for a lot of comedians.
Right.
Because, I mean, you host a room that is accepting of almost every type of joke,
right.
Yeah. And every comedian, you do a bilingual comedy show.
Sure.
So it's French and English. But I just, well, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can't say on a lot of stages.
Right.
But at the same time, comedians are, everywhere. Mm-hmm. So do you think, as like a venue owner, that you have some sort of responsibility to let comedians try their shit? Like, how do you?
Oh yeah, of course.
How do you decide who comes on and who doesn't?
Well, that's just whether or not you're funny. But I never, I certainly don't police what the comics say or do. Like, maybe I'll tell someone like, "Hey, I love that bit. You should do that bit tonight," just because I think it's hilarious. But that's like the extent of my input on their act. Like, if someone goes up, it doesn't even happen that often, but if someone goes up and, like, they do something, well, usually it's me. But if someone else goes up and does something that's, like, whatever, it's kind of a little too edgy and a hush falls across the room, and then I go up to, like, as the host after, I'll just be like, well, that was, that guy's got some soul searching to do. Ladies and gentlemen, and, like, you just make it quick, or, like, that's the kind of story you just keep to yourself, buddy.
Yeah.
And it's like a fun way to do it, to just be, like, as the host and sort of, like, maybe the overseer of the night, it's like, I'll acknowledge with you guys that was kind of fucked up or whatever, like whatever that guy said or whatever. But I also want to, like, dampen the fire before anything, it's like, but that was like, these are jokes, guys. Everyone knew it was a comedy show. Let's not have any blogs tomorrow, and like, say something too, to just be like, we can all address that was kind of weird, but we don't need to, like, we're all fine. You know what I mean? Like, no one
everyone's all right.
Yeah. So that's one way to do it, because I've been to a few shows where, like, someone will say something that, again, isn't even that bad. And then, the host will come and be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I want to apologize to her. And it's like, well, now you've started something. Yeah, like, you've done more damage almost than the person who made a ugly joke.
Right.
Just because you made it now it's a thing. Like,
now it's a mistake.
Right. So
that everyone who was unsure now knows it's a mistake.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Where some people are like, I kind of thought that was funny. I guess I'm not allowed to laugh at it. But, so no, I don't tell them what to do. I mean, the French comics, it's like, I don't know what they're saying anyway. So they could be up there, I don't know what Z Kyle sounds like in French, but for all I know, I just listen for the laughs. Like, I'm in the back, right? So with that, it's whenever the French comics are on, I try to listen too. My French is, it's suboptimal, but
it'll always be suboptimal.
Yeah, sure. Well, buddy, I met a guy when I first moved here, and he goes, there's about 3 stages to learning French in Montreal. There's the first stage where you're really bad and you have this terrible accent and you're getting everything wrong, but, like, the girls really think it's cute and they'll really love you for it. And he's like, then there's the second stage where, like, you're pretty good now. You're not fluent. You're pretty good, but then your mistakes aren't really cute anymore, and it's just kind of grammar stuff. And there's a third stage where you speak it. You're gonna want to stay at stage 1 as long as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good advice.
Exactly. Don't move too fast.
Right.
You're setting the bar. You're setting the bar as you go. So.
Right. But no, yeah. So for them, I just listen to, and I one of my roommates is French, and our photographer is French, francophone as well. So, like, I asked them to. I kind of use their input for, like, who's good, who's not good, and they're I trust them. They're there for every show, so they know too.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll be like, oh, you didn't get a lot of laughs, that guy, but he's good. Like, have that guy back, or.
Right.
This person's.
It's such an awesome city too to be in when there's 2 distinct languages. You had a stand-up, I forget his name, who did an awesome set. That was basically
Emile Corrie. Was that on Friday?
Yeah.
And he's, like, switching, like, in mid-sentence.
Yeah. It was captivating,
and it helps. It really helps the Anglophones as well too, because they're like, oh, okay, I can, because I half know what you're saying anyway. But then when you, like, the few times he switched English,
give a little context.
And he was certainly quite masterful.
That's masterful. Yeah, that's doing that. That's really.
And there's a few comics like that. Aliyah Kanani. She's a Toronto comic, but she comes up pretty regularly, and she headlined the week before, and she just does that too. Like, every other, half the sentence in English, half the sentence in French, and those are like, that's, you know, if you're advertising a bilingual show, that's like the ultimate headliner you can get, because everybody's happy. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. How do you how do you book all your guests? Do people just inbox you and they're like, hey, I'm looking for a spot on Friday?
Yeah, it's all through the Good Book there. People
nice.
Message in, and if I don't know them, I ask them to send me a tape. I don't really do vouches.
Yeah.
That's a really common thing in comedy, where people are like, oh, ask this guy, he'll vouch for you. And it's like, that just means he likes you. That doesn't mean you're funny.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
of course.
And people, and
of course,
you know, like I mean, there's guys.
I like a lot of people that aren't funny.
Yeah, right, exactly. and I could see someone saying to me, "Oh, I'm going to Toronto. Will you vouch for me?" And it's like, look, if they're funny, I will. But I don't know what to do if I'm in a position where it's like, look, I like you, but I don't.
Yeah,
I don't really put my name on it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
and comedy's not exactly open for interpretation a lot of the time.
It
needs to make people laugh.
Yeah, exactly. Like you know, a great comic can have an off night, and an okay comedian can have a great set. But you know, more or less, like you know the range of everybody. So, but yeah, so the book in the French, well, there's a huge French scene. Like, it's massive. Like, it's like probably quadruple the size of the Anglo scene.
Yeah.
So they're it's like, no, the only difficulty with booking French comics is that they make a lot of money on their side. So even though they like a lot of French comics really like the room and they want to come there and stuff, it's harder to maintain a booking, because like if they get a call last minute and they're like, oh, I want to book you for Friday, which is the same time as my show, I'm going to pay you $400. Like, I'm not paying necessarily anything. If they're headlining, I'm paying them, but if they're not, so and I get that. I'm not like, we had a deal, man. It's like, you got to go where the money is.
Yeah,
but
right.
But that makes it a little bit more difficult. But the English comics, it's like, you know, there's quite a pool to choose from now too, because the room has sort of got a good reputation in Toronto as well. So I get a lot of comics. Like, usually every show now will have at least like one comic from Toronto or two comics from Toronto, which is great too, because the Toronto comedy scene, which I only know from like hearsay. I've never been down there. I mean, I've been to Toronto, but I've never performed down there.
Yeah.
Those guys and ladies are hustling like hard, you know, like it's you know, the way they do in sort of New York. It's like the rent's expensive.
Right.
And big city. So those guys can do like 4 or 5 shows a night. Like, they can just bounce around. Whereas we're lucky to get in, like, if you get 2 sets in a night here, that's like big, and that's rare. Like, to get like 4 sets in a week's good.
It's crazy. What's the I guess if you've never been down there, but you must hear from other comics. Yeah. There must be a ton of comedy rooms in Toronto. Yeah,
tons, and to the point where like some of them are like pay to play. Like, you gotta, as a comic, you know, pay to get on stage. Like, that's the level of like, that's how congested it is with open micers. So when they come up here, they feel like royalty, because like, so the way, like, I pay the headliner, and then all the featured acts, like, I just buy a ton of beer. You know, I don't cheap out on the beer.
Sure do.
You know what I mean, I buy like I'll buy like 6 cases of beer for the night. You know, so everyone gets to have their fill. But like, so that's the thing. Like, they're like, some of them are used to like pay to play, or just like, you know, playing a room to 6 people who didn't even know a comedy show was about to happen. And so then when they come up to like play a room like mine, where there's like 60 people that are very attentive and they're getting drinks, and like they love it. So it's nice for us too, because they really like coming up. Like, they feel good about it. So that's nice. And they're also like, because they do have a better work ethic than us. I'm not saying we couldn't, but like, we just don't have the industry for it, you know, to have that work ethic. So that's the other thing too, is they're pretty reliable Toronto comics. Like, by the time they get up, it's like they've honed their set. So like, to give them a silent room full of people, they're like ready to go, you know, like, they rarely blow that opportunity.
Yeah.
Which is nice. So it's like, you can kind of book Toronto comics with confidence.
Yeah. What but the French market for stand-up comedy here is enormous.
Oh, man,
and it's like the biggest city in the world for a comedy.
This is why I want to learn French, for economic reasons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have incentive.
Oh, no joke. Like, and I know a few people who are also pursuing that as well, and are starting to get like a lot of regular paid spots now that they've like you know, notched up their French. So plus, I think you'd have the anomaly aspect too. Like, if I was to do it, you know, I'm from Ontario, I'm an Anglophone, so I think I could play that up.
You get that stage 1 French,
right. Well, and I've done a few French shows where I'm like the token Anglophone. And I'll try to throw in like whatever French words I can wherever I can, and like, they love that, you know, because like, you know how Quebecois people are, like they really do appreciate if you make any effort. They're pretty good about it.
Yeah,
they're very appreciative.
They'll extend all the branches.
So if you're up there joking around and they kind of already like you, and then you're like, you just kind of throw in the odd word that you know is the right word in French, like, they laugh just at the fact that you're. Plus after, they're like, hey, that's cool, keep it up. Like, they're you know,
the kind of resentment between English and French is going away rapidly now.
Rapidly. Like, I don't even think it's like I moved here 4 years ago, and I didn't even like I've really seen any of it.
It was lingering when I came here, like 9 years ago.
Yeah,
but
I think it's because the Quebecois are like, fuck, maybe I'd like to travel.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like just the sense of like, look, this isn't a English kind of French kind of thing. It's like if you want to, you know, if you want to go to Australia to work, if you want to go to Europe, if you want to go to like, there's so many places that just like English is just a good language to have. Yeah. So I think that's part of it is like you're seeing more like even like tree planters in BC or Quebecois, like, you know what I mean? Like they're starting to migrate a lot more. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. And just generally like, I don't think people are worried that like French is going to get lost either. The way they may have been 10 years ago. Like, I don't really think it'll ever get lost.
The French cast a wide net across the world.
Right. And they can't get along amongst themselves anyway. Right? Like, you go to any party where it's all French people, and like there's always a Parisian and a Quebecois arguing about the minutiae of the language in the corner, and they're like pulling you in. They're like, hey, come here. And you're like, I think the language war is over.
Mais pourquoi le weekend?
Yeah, exactly. But, so yeah, no, it's... it would be nice to get more into the French scene, and because like they got so many great rooms.
Right.
And, like,
well, I mean, you have a great room for it. Your room is so adaptable because I mean, when you hooked me, I came a few times. You know, I used to go to a lot of comedy shows when I was younger. I would play at a lot of comedy shows. And then after I met you, you're like, oh, I got this spot, come check it out. And I did. And then I think like the second or third time I was there, you had a band playing afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was the 100th show.
The 100th show.
We had a little band come in, Only the Righteous.
Only the Righteous. That with Clarel, right?
Clarel Jamin, yeah.
Man, that guy knows how to play.
Oh.
And especially in your room, it was so cool. It was one of the coolest parties I've been to because the crowd is entirely greased up from all this awesome comedy. Yeah. And then you get a funk soul band to just play for 2 hours.
That's one of the great things about our after parties is that, like you said, like they're greased up from watching the show. So like there's common ground because you all shared an experience together by watching the show. So it's like if you want to go up and talk to somebody and maybe you're like a little bit more socially awkward or whatever, shy, you can just like easily be like, hey, that one guy was funny, right? And boom, you've got an icebreaker. So that's nice. Like I love seeing how much like intermingling goes on after our shows, and it's like it is great because you don't really get that at a bar necessarily. Like a lot of times you go to the bar with like your 4 friends and then you guys sit at a table and everyone else sits at their own table that they came with, and it's like, what did we go out for?
Yeah. So, but when you're talking next to someone's stove,
right? Exactly. It's a kitchen party vibe.
20 feet from where the comedy is standing. Fill this guy back up.
Can I send? Who's this guy? Your assistant?
Young Nick. Go Nick. Grab.
Young Nick, pull up a beer for me.
Yeah, you pull up a beer from the fridge.
Joking before we went on air about Joe Rogan's podcast, how he's always, hey Jimmy, pull up a video. Meanwhile, you're at work listening, going, I can't see this. This sucks.
Joe Rogan just now we're gonna get political on this music/comedy podcast. Joe Rogan just interviewed the guy who co-founded Twitter.
Who's that?
Jack Dorsey, I think his name is.
Okay.
And got roasted in the comments for because everybody thinks Jack Dorsey is part of the deep web and the deep state and all this stuff.
Really? Oh, because of all the censorship and stuff?
Exactly.
And so what were they upset with Rogan about, like not being pressing enough about that?
Exactly. Or? Not fucking holding the light on him and
right.
Why did you ban Alex Jones?
Right.
I thought it was all right. Hey, thanks.
Yeah, I'll have to listen to that before I can. I don't have an opinion on it.
Exactly.
I don't know.
You better not. You better listen to it first.
Does he bring up fighting?
Of course, he brings up fighting, DMT, and chimpanzees.
Of course, and mushrooms. Yeah. It's kind of like when you're doing DMT and fighting a guy.
Yeah,
I guess it's kind of like that.
And the chimpanzee comes up who's been microdosing mushrooms.
Yeah, of course, no doubt.
And has gained human intelligence.
I love how he's like surprised when someone hasn't been in an isolation tank. It's like, what?
Yeah. Have you ever done a sensory deprivation tank?
Really? You got to get out more.
No, man. No, I haven't. They're great for you. I got one right in the back.
Well, it's funny you bring up censorship in the sense that I really think that the best comedy, at least in best stand-up right now, is happening on the ground floor. Like it really is, because that's the these guys don't have a Netflix show to lose, right? They don't have anything to lose. We're all
exciting.
broke. We're trying to get enough money to have 5 or 6 pints that night. You know what I mean? So that makes it for me like, because I really love stand up, like as the art form that it is, like, so that's kind of made me feel like, you know, they say like don't quit your day job or whatever, but it's like, yeah, I want to keep a day job so I can just keep saying whatever the fuck I want to say. Yeah. It's like, that's the thing with someone like Rogan. It's like you can see, not him particularly, but like anyone, as they accumulate such fame and wealth, it's like the less they give their, you know, real opinions, because they just have so much more to lose. And like, we are in such a volatile time where, like, you know,
I don't know if Joe Rogan has any more opinions to give, really. I mean, the guy has been recorded more than any human on earth, man.
Yeah, I know. I see that too. Like,
so how do you manage that? Just being the person, who's always like, and this.
Yeah, how do you? And it's not a slight at him, but it's like, how do you make 4 hours a day entertaining? Like, that's not easy to do for anybody, especially after you've been doing it for a couple of years. Yeah, you kind of know. That's the thing. Like, I like his podcast. I think it's certainly original, and he deserves the success he's accrued. But I just also feel like I kind of don't listen to it that much anymore, just because you kind of know where it's going. That's the thing. It's like you're not ever gonna be like, what's Joe Rogan think about this? It's like, you know what he thinks about it, you know?
Yeah. And most of the guests he'll have too are all over the place on the internet, so you know what they're gonna be talking about anyway. Right. Sometimes they have like a new thing to talk about or promote, but. You know, it's the singular guests that have never been on, like the Elon Musks and the Kanyes one day.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes when he has comics on, it's like a little bit alienating, because they're just like, oh, last night at the store, and this happened or whatever. And then they're all talking about like different restaurants where they like to eat, and you're like, you know.
And they're all in T-shirts in fucking February.
Right. Come on. But so sometimes those, it's like when they get talking about LA, it's funny, man. I feel no romance about LA. It's like New York, I kind of get it, you know, a little bit.
Yeah,
still.
There's romance in New York.
Yeah,
there's not romance in LA, but LA is just comfortable, man. Everything's it's a warm bath.
Yeah, that's true, I guess. But I mean, I've never been there, so I can't really say from experience. But it just doesn't. I feel like I would go there and not like anybody. I feel like I would always be in conversations where I'm like, I think this guy's full of shit.
Well, everyone I mean, LA is it's a market, right? People go there to make it. So, have you ever been to like, I don't know if you've been around for like Just for Laughs parties, or like when Just for Laughs is in town, there's always an after party at the Hyatt.
Right. I know all about it. I've never gone for that reason. Because I was like, I thought about it. I was like, what would I say even if I met Dave Chappelle? Like, what am I going to say to the guy?
Yeah. So
great set.
Exactly.
You know, like you're awesome. Can you shake my hand? He's going to be like, I guess. I kind of just want to have a drink and talk to people I know.
But I would be bartending at Theatre St. Catherine show. Right. And then, you know, our show would be over at like 1:30 in the morning, and then I would restock the fridges, and then I would go to the Hyatt to
for the after party.
Hang out.
Yeah.
And when you walk through that crowd, you know, it's a different set of eyes that falls upon you. Because people are just like, not famous.
Oh, right. What's this guy worth? Yeah.
Guy kind of looks like Jimmy Carr. No, it's just the jacket.
Yeah, and I don't get it too. Like I saw
that must be LA.
With no offense to all the local comics, it's like I saw a bunch of them, like, you know, changing their profile pictures to them with, you know, Jimmy Carr, then Russell Peters or whatever, and it's like, what are you, buddies? You know what I mean? Like, you're not, like, because you can see, like, the classic too, like, they're smiling with full wholeheartedness, the comic, but then, like, Russell Peters is, like, not smiling with his eyes at all. He's just, like, going through the motions. He's like, this is the downfall of being a millionaire, but whatever, I'll do it, you know? So I don't know. I've just never really, well, actually, Adam Ega came back to my place last year after Just for Laughs, which was sweet.
Yeah.
Which I had nothing to do with. I was just at home getting drunk by myself.
Greatest co-host in podcast history.
Greatest late night talk show of all time. And also the booker of the Comedy Store.
That's right. Yeah.
So he told me
he's the one that turned it around, right? He like caught the fresh new Comedy Store,
right?
And started really.
He told me he would give me a spot. We stayed up for 2 days together. So I don't know if that's. I think that's true though, because a couple comics actually went down already and took him up on that offer. That were there also with me that night at our place, and he did. They said that
they gave him a spot.
Yeah,
at the Comedy Store.
They said they didn't pay for drinks or anything. They were like, he gets already taken, right this way, kind of thing. So that's kind of making me want to go to LA, although I'm broke as usual. So
you should try woofing. You know, you just have to find an organic farm around LA to work on for free.
Right. A smoothie farm or something.
Yeah, learn how to make a smoothie bowl and
smoothie bowl.
Yeah, well, fucking everybody wants to live where the air doesn't hurt their skin. So I mean, LA is populated for a reason. But, fuck it, man, we don't need it.
Hey, man, I love Montreal, baby. I love the city.
Montreal's all right.
It's a great city because, like...
I can't believe, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't believe that as an English comedian not even, as an English person, you decided to be a comedian in Montreal. Am I right?
Well, I decided to move to Montreal from Vancouver. I was evicted from my place there it was like a tear-down house, so we were on a month-to-month lease, which was awesome, but then when that day came, I had to make a move fast, and Vancouver... to me, it's kind of like, I don't know, I shouldn't say it's kind of like LA because I've never been there, but it has that same sort of West Coast. Everybody's chill, but like they're not cool.
No.
Everyone's always chill.
Yeah.
We're so chill.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool, can we get drunk and swear and smoke cigarettes and shit?
Whoa,
I don't even smoke, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I got to go for a run at 6 a.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you doing?
You go to a party.
What are you doing MDMA for tonight? It's just every Friday.
Yeah, it's all synthetics out there.
Yeah.
But... anyways, no, like I had a great time in Vancouver. It is a nice city, but I was there for a year and a half and it ran its course. So I was like, growing up, I'd come to Montreal to party a few times when I was in high school, and as any like 18-year-old does when living in Ontario, because you can come up and drink and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But so I always had like fond memories of the place. And then my plan was to move here and learn French immediately, which I did take an 8-month course. French course when I moved here. Every day for 8 months, 40 hours a week. Learned nothing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like a job.
Oh, like a job, yeah. Full time.
Was that at one of the government centres? The Centre L'Artigue or some shit? Centre
L'Artigue, yeah. I went there. I went to Centre Saint-Joseph. I hit them all up. But the problem is I'm still the same dummy I was in high school when it comes to school. So I was like, I'm sitting in the back. And everyone's like, yeah, that's fine. Go. I'm like, no one cares where they sit. Okay, cool. And then like I'm there like elbowing this like 45-year-old Pakistani woman next to me who's like got like 4 kids and like 3 jobs. And I'm like, what are you doing Saturday? And he's like, what? Please, sir, I'm here to learn.
Do you want to come to my house party?
Yeah, exactly. Get a load of Madame Bourduc's haircut. Am I right? And they're like,
I'm just trying to get a job, sir. Please, leave me alone.
God.
Yeah, it's a hustle, man, learning French in this city.
Yeah, so I still do intend to learn it. It's just it was a lot. I just think I'm not meant for like a traditional learning environment. Like I'm just not very good in school. I just had a hard time paying attention. Plus you go and hungover all the time. And the other thing too is like you're still like the weird thing with those, and I get it, they're government sanctioned or whatever, so like they don't want to waste tax dollars, and I respect that, but it's like they still do treat like kids at those schools, which is weird. Like if you show up like 10 minutes late, like you got to go to the office and like tell them why you're late.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm almost 30, man. Like
I noticed that too. I did that as well, and I think that might be because maybe you have the same experience. Most of the teachers there are like 50, 60-year-old retiree teachers who are like doing a couple of years before they retire at a center, teaching English, or teaching weird. French to like, English people.
I'm done asking going to the bathroom at this point in my life.
So they have all the same rules from when I was back in elementary school. Oh man.
But no, so the comedy thing, like it wasn't like my plan. I was planning to move to Montreal, but it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go there and become a comic. The comedy thing was just like, it was one of those things that like I grew up watching stand up, and like my parents were pretty strict, Irish Catholic, but like we could watch Seinfeld because they love Seinfeld, and he's pretty clean. So
yeah.
I used to watch like all of Seinfeld stand up when I was like 7 or 8, like instead of cartoons, I was like watching stand up. So I've always had a passion for it. And then, of course, you get older, then you start watching like George Carlin and Richard Pryor and Bill Hicks and Norm Macdonald, all these other guys that are like just incredible. And you realize like the power of the medium and how I love the individualism of it. I love everything about it. So it was the thing where I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that one day. Like I just had no doubt in my mind I would do it, but I didn't know when. And then I went to McLean's Pub, which is a Sunday night show. Whose phone is that? Is that mine? No,
it's me.
Oh man,
that's just the host of the podcast. Don't worry.
Friggin' guy. But anyway, and then so McLean's Pub, which still runs a Sunday night like show up, go up show, and I went to one of those, and I just remember sitting in the back being like, I'm funnier than all these fucking guys, And I always had an attitude about it, and before I did it, like I'd see any comic, it would make me mad. I'd be like, oh fuck this guy.
You dropped the ball,
right.
Buster.
And we come back from a show one time, and I was like, those guys suck, blah blah blah. And then like, and then my cousin Sean, who I live with, is just like, yeah, you talk a big game, but like, let's see you get up there. And it's so true because like the first time I went up, it was like, oh, this is hard. you know, which is great because it's very humbling. So then now I'm like very forgiving of comics. Like even comics,
Right.
when I watch a comic, even now, like Bomb, I'm like, I get it. Like you had a rough night, you know, like, or you're new or whatever, and you're still trying to find your voice, that kind of stuff. So like, that's one thing that's nice about it. Pursuing anything, you know what I mean? Like you try to learn the guitar, and all of a sudden you respect Hendrix even more than you did before because you realize how hard it is.
Yeah, that's what communities are based on, man. Like as soon as you see the same fear in the eyes of the performer that you have experienced, you're like, okay, let's. Yeah. Like you can see past that fear once you've experienced it. Mm-hmm. I mean, like actually looking at it, you could be like, he would be better if he wasn't afraid.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. You start to see potential too, right?
And start to see
new comics.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
So I run another room called Crowbar, or at a bar called Crowbar on Crescent, and that's sort of where anyone that I see has potential, like at the open mic show, whatever, I'll start telling, oh, come to Crowbar. I'm not going to put them on my show right away because, you know, there is a hierarchy order of things. So it's like you can't just, I mean, I actually have done that before, but it usually doesn't end well. But, so I'll tell people like, oh, come to Crowbar. If I see like just even like that twinkle in the eye where you're like, this guy's got something or this girl's got something. And you can tell pretty quick because some people will come out, because Crowbar is like, the nice thing about Crowbar, or the thing I love about it is it's like, it's the opposite of our show. Our show is like, you know, well produced. There's a DJ playing music in between the acts. Like the lighting is great. Yeah. Photographer, you know, someone working the door.
Bear skin hanging behind the stage.
Well, it feels like an event. It feels like a night. And Crowbar is like the opposite. It's like no glitz, no glam. Like it's like
it looks like the room you get changed for laser tag in.
Sure. And that's actually an improvement. They just did renovations. It used to look like where someone would get a room where someone would get murdered, and now it looks sort of like a room where you might just plan a murder.
Right.
Like it's upgraded. Okay. But no, that's what's great about it. So sometimes comics will come out and they're like, oh, I'm not doing that. You know, they try it once, they're like, oh, fuck this. And it's like, that's fine, I'll see you around or whatever. But then you get other comics who are like, no, I hate doing that room and I hate the feeling after, but I'm going to keep coming and I want to thicken my skin. And then that's how you're already probably on your way to a good comic. Because if you can go up and get no laughs and then do it again the next week, it's like...
It's the commitment to doing it until it feels right and doing it until it feels good.
Right.
I think that's like a in a lot of successful artists I've seen, that's a trait that they have, is that they don't really... They'll sit down and play the guitar, you know, until it sounds good to them.
Right.
And they won't stop until they won't be like, oh fuck, it sucked today. Tomorrow, I'll try tomorrow.
Right.
They'll do it until it goes good. And so like, I'm sure it crosses over with comedians too, where they're like, I'm gonna win that room. I'm gonna figure out how to be funny in that room, even though I have, you know, I don't like the neon spray paint or the black lights.
Right, sure. Well, and you get guys. One thing I love to see, like, is like even the other night, like while you were at the show, and Harrison Weinreb went up. He's a young kid. Funny, really talented, and like, you know, does really, really well for like 20 minutes, and he gets off stage, and I go pay him, and I was like, great set, man, that was awesome, you know. And he's just like, oh, I fucked up that one bit. You know? It's all he remembers, you know, despite the fact that like people are in stitches for 20 minutes. But I love that, to see that in a way, because it's like, man, you're going to be just fine. Yeah. You know, like if you made everyone laugh for 20 minutes and you remember the one dull stretch of 30 seconds, that's all he remembers. And he's only like 20. It's like, man, in 10 years.
He's only 20.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. How did you find Harrison? Because I've seen him there a couple of times.
Yeah, just doing the open mics, and it's because like one thing that our room does also is like I mean, we're not afraid to take risks in the sense of like, I don't need a comic to be established to give him a lot of stage time. Whereas I think that's a fatal error that a lot of bookers are also comics, so then they get like trapped in this like the finer politics of the scene. They're like, this guy is good because of this, so I always got to give him time, and this guy hasn't really proven it's like himself yet, or he has no credits. This guy did JFL, so he's got it. You know,
that's tough.
And it's like, that's fine, and everyone can run their room how they want to run their room. But I feel like I like putting on people who I personally think are funny and I think are unique and original voices, and that has so far has worked very well, because you need to have a vision. Like, you know, back to the Comedy Store. That was the cool thing about Mitzi Shore, was she ran that place for like, I don't know, 30 years or something. And like, she actually was putting comics up, and like she'd rent out a couple of houses in LA and store like 20 comics and let them live there for free and just keep coming to the store. Like, she's quite a visionary. But she'd have on like there's all these comics that went on to be huge, and like whether you like them or not is irrelevant. Like, but she had Sam Kinison and Mark Maron and Andrew Dice Clay and all these people that like went on to be absolutely massive. She had them at like 20 living in some house. Like she saw it. And she, funny enough, she didn't let Louis C.K. ever play. He only played there after she died.
I heard that story.
Maybe not after she died, but after she was no longer involved. And again, whether or not you like Louis C.K., like it just I think it shows the prowess of her vision to be like someone who went on to sell out Madison Square Garden. She goes, I don't think you're funny, so you're not going on.
And it's her room, right?
Yeah, and it's her room, and so that's how you got to run a room. And I tell other comics that too, if they're like starting out or running their first show. Like, who should I book? Like, I know I want to get this guy, and I need to get this. And like, people have told me he's really. And I was like, just book who you like, who you think's funny. Like. Now, you don't want it to get too incestuous because that's the downfall of other shows, too. I've seen shows come and go in the 2 years I've been around because of that. They're like, we'll book the same 5 people every time. But they do the same 7 minutes every time. And then they don't get return customers.
No kidding. Yeah, you guys must have a lot of returns.
Oh, yeah, tons. Like every week I would say like...
But also, like always new people. I've been there for a couple of weeks, many weeks in a row, like 5 or 6 weeks in a row now. Yeah. It's my night out.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, always new faces, always new people,
right?
And laughing at different jokes. You start to hear a couple of repeat jokes, which I love. Like as a musician, I love it when a comedian has to, do the hard job of like repeating a joke and doing it again. Yeah, because I'm like, how are they gonna maneuver this shit?
That's another thing Harrison Weinreb is a master at. I've seen the guys act so many times. I could do it for you, but I couldn't do it the way he does it. That's the thing. It's like I could quote it verbatim, but he's always like...
It's the pacing, I think. I don't know what it is,
That's the thing. It's like he's such a genius that like he'll look out and go, fuck, I like the first 10 people were here 3 weeks ago and I did all these jokes. But then he'll do them... And they'll still... Almost acknowledging that. Like, it's crazy. Like, he'll be like, got a haircut the other day, knowing that the guy's heard the haircut joke, and so he'll just fucking, find a way to make that specific guy laugh again, The people hearing him for the first time are already laughing,
Yeah.
So...
or the one he has this one bit. I mean, I hate to give away the bit. I won't give it away. But
I don't think anyone's going to listen to this.
Yeah, probably no. We don't have anybody listening. But he'll do that bit about his mom when he claps. It's the 21st century, we have iPhones and Wi-Fi everywhere, and all I have to do is clap, and my mom will turn off the lights for me. Yeah. And he said, my mom's actually here right now, and everybody's like...
Of course, right? They take the bait.
Hey, please don't clap.
Yeah,
my mom will turn the lights off. Yeah, that's funny shit. Well, cool, man. I think you got to go to a show pretty soon. It's
well, I got time.
You got time?
A little bit of time.
No, you don't got to run out the door?
Cool. Well, I can
ask you more.
I just kind of show up whenever I want.
I can ask you more hard-hitting questions about the state of comedy. And
I'll divulge something. I think all the late night guys suck.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Every one of them.
Late night TV.
I like, even though I don't even watch Conan anymore, but I like Conan. I got something for him from when. Not that he's
back in the day.
Yeah, like that's one of him and Letterman were like the two guys I watched when I was in high school.
Yeah, he's got a podcast now, Conan.
Jibber Jabber.
It's called please. It's called something like "Please Be My Friend" or something like that, where he's like, I've been a late night host for 95 years and I don't have any friends, and so now I'm getting all my guests back on to try and make friends with a podcast. It's pretty fun.
Cool. That's sweet. I'll check that out.
Yeah. I grew up with watching Conan, but now there's like six. There's like six late night shows.
7, and they all suck. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Like, I don't even, because they've all just become sort of like, how Jon Stewart basically started like the political comedy.
Then
Colbert kind of came in with his sort of right wing,
perfected the medium.
I'd say so. I liked Colbert more than when he was doing a Colbert part. I liked it more than because he was playing into it was more satirical.
It was absurd enough.
Yeah, exactly. But then and like, look, that's fine if that's your bag, that's cool. But it's weird that that's become what they all do now. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they all just go up and they're like, today like, the finer details of today's political
Who do we
events. Hate? Yeah, and it's just like, man, I want to laugh. Like, I don't want to be like, Robert Mueller today opened a case file on some constituent of Trump's, but it's, like, I guess. I don't know.
But anybody who's well-versed in law would know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it
looks
it's a bit
like
much, man.
You got a baker's dozen of subpoenas, but it's,
but that's it's the weird thing about comedy now. Comedy is trying to wear all these hats. But not trying. saying. I mean, it's been forced to wear all these hats because comedy is like one of the only undefined art forms that we have, where we're like, there's no, you can, but I'm sure no one who's funny actually goes to these. You can go, like, there's not really schools of comedy, you know, like as art forms, you can go to.
There's a couple, but
there's a couple. Nobody goes to them.
Fly-by-nighters, those
exactly.
Guys,
but like, and not to get into a big rant about education or whatever, but there are music schools and there are acting schools and dancing schools and shit, all the other art forms. But comedy now, it's kind of just as you like. It's whatever you want to talk about, whatever you think is funny, and as long as people have a physical laughing reaction to it, it's comedy. Right. But it's still a very delicate art form, and it's kind of been appropriated by all these different media streams now.
Well, there's this idea too that now you have to have a message.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You have to make people laugh. If you want to have a message, that's fine. But I don't think you have to. And I think that I'm immersed in the scene. I'm watching comedy basically every night, on YouTube and in real life, and like all the people that crush the most of any show are like the least political people. Like there's they're doing jokes about Fruit Loops or something, you know what I mean? They're doing some obscure thing. They're talking about how crazy their parents are. It's like, it's all relatable, real stuff. Yeah. And the people that go up and get very much like, they just get political. It's like, I'm
going to prove to you I'm smart and well informed.
Right. It never comes off that way to me, but, I don't think you need to. And even like the thing too, like, and I'm not trying, like, I haven't even seen Nanette, so I'm not trying to like rag on it. I haven't even seen it, so I don't know. And I don't have a problem with someone doing like a kind of a heavily emotionally based set, or an hour where it's like, I'm going to tell real stories. It's going to get emotional at times. We're going to laugh at times. Like I know, again, I haven't seen it, but I heard Neil Brennan did a great one. Did something like that with, what was it, 3 mics?
3 mics, yeah.
Yeah, like.
But it was fantastic because it was.
Sure, I don't know. Again, I mean, I just know that's a stream of comedy now that's like getting more popular, where it's like, be emotional and address real issues, and it's like, again, that's cool. Like, but that's not the philosophy I'm coming from, and I'm like,
I think that's just a side effect of someone once doing that in a very funny way, and then someone else seeing it and being like, oh, now I can just talk about my problems.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Then you get a million permutations of people not doing it right, but thinking that it's part of the medium. That's what I mean by when I say it's not like an comedy isn't an academically defined art form.
Yeah,
it's just whatever works, whatever's successful.
No, you're absolutely right, because you watch Richard Pryor, and it's like he would be like talking about growing up in the whorehouse he grew up in, and like terrible, his drug abuse and his divorce or whatever. But but the thing is, it would be like one line of sad followed by like 5 lines of hilarious,
bang,
uproarious.
Yeah.
So you're probably right. It's like people watch that and they're like, oh, I'll do that too, but they miss the bang, bang, bang funny part.
Yeah. They were hypnotized by the quick setup.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem in every art form. Thinking that you can just kind of copy the medium rather than just do what you want to do or do what you think is funny. Right.
I mean, the same goes on for like, Kill Your Idols. It's like when you start out, you'll do a lot of, not like jokes, like you're not stealing jokes, but you'll steal cadences, you'll steal like certain styles from the people you like, and that takes some time to get it out of your system, but that's just a matter of like putting in the stage time to get it out of your system.
Right.
You know what I mean? You pick up a guitar, if you like Bowie, you're going to start playing very Bowie-esque songs for the first 6 months or whatever till you're
6 years, but okay.
6 years, sure, yeah whatever. But so you got to get that out of your system as well. That's like another kind of hurdle you have to get over, is like, is that me?
Yeah, right.
Sometimes I still do sets and I kind of feel like, am I just pushing ideas that someone else gave me, or is this like my own? It's hard to separate, especially right now, right? Because we are so influenced with social media about stuff. So like, and
saturated information and opinions and. Yeah. I mean, you had a joke the other day that it went well. It was a hilarious joke, but it was like kind of like a laugh and then a stop, and then a silence. Your Gillette joke.
Oh, yeah.
On Gillette.
But even that, I think so. Something like, oh, Gillette.
But it was a very nuanced. I thought it was a perfect way into that topic. Your joke. Right. It was very nuanced.
Sure.
But because it was Gillette, people were like,
Right. What is he really saying?
And what I said to you out of the show was like, oh man, yeah, people haven't read the blogs yet. They don't know whether or not this could be funny.
Right.
And that to me is if I had to run a.
But even that's a perfect example of a joke I just tried once and lost. Even though some people laughed, it's like I don't care about it. First of all, it's topical, right? It's about a commercial that just happened that people are going to forget about in 3 weeks anyway.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like. That's like you do anything like that's what I'm saying. Like now I'm guilty of the thing I said I wouldn't do, and it's like.
But that's what I liked about the joke was it wasn't even political how you said it.
But the problem is,
but
you say
it's topical.
You say anything that could even be perceived as political
right.
is now political.
If you say anything topical, that has all this politics attached to it,
right.
People will be like they'll just stop. Sometimes they'll stop listening, because they don't want because that thing that you're trying to make fun of, is now a political statement.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like and
politics aren't funny.
No, they aren't funny. Remember, I feel like a couple years ago when no one knew about politics.
Yeah, man. I remember the days when politics had no effect on our lives.
You had no idea who the congressman of Virginia was.
You couldn't tell how much worse your life was because of this politician or that politician.
Exactly. Oh,
that's freedom.
I know that the Secretary of State's name now. What? I never knew that.
Yeah. Why do I know?
Can't even name our own politicians, for God's sake.
Why do I know who the presidential press correspondent is?
Yeah,
I should not have to know the American press correspondent.
Well, we're not going to do anything about it anyway.
No.
We're going to share articles where we read the headline and we're going to share it and be like, duh.
Yeah. Well, with with comedy then, because there are all these late night shows that in a sense have an obligation to talk about this stuff from their networks.
Well, they feel they do. I don't think they actually have a moral obligation to.
No, I don't think they have a moral obligation.
It's labeled as a variety.
But
show.
I think they're probably trying to mirror Twitter in a sense, right?
Sure, right.
They probably get most of their ideas from whatever's trending on Twitter, whatever's trending on fucking all of the news outlets, and they that's the only way to come up with an hour-long show every night of the week.
Well, and there's been a huge. Not case, but like a huge thing come out about that. Like you've seen, like so many of the late night guys are just taking jokes off Twitter.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of joke thievery from Reddit, Twitter. I don't have Twitter, and I've never been on Reddit, so I shouldn't say. I went on Reddit once, and I was like, "This is the tackiest looking. This looks like Craigslist for ideas."
Yeah, yeah.
So I never went back. But I like not being on that because I don't want to be influenced or whatever, and that's even something that happens in the scene sometimes where people are like, "Oh, so and so did this joke, and I saw it on Twitter earlier that day, so they probably saw it," and it's like. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. It's so hard to know. We also are like-minded people, so if we're all watching the same news story, it's not unbelievable that 2 people of a billion would come up with the same joke about it.
Yeah.
But someone put together like a laundry list of all the different jokes that had been taken, like regularly or taken earlier. So you're absolutely right that they're looking at Twitter to see. But that's the problem, right? Like we're in a time now where people are like, "What do you want?" There's no artistry there. To be like, oh, we've kind of like our research people have done see what's
of what
trending.
The audience wants.
This is what they want to see, and then that's how you get that feedback loop.
Right, but that's not creation.
Well, this is kind of a little bit of off topic, but so talking about whether or not our comedy is an undefined art form. Now, it's still not recognized as an art form in Canada by the government. Stand up.
You can't get any of that sweet government cream and grants.
Right, to which I reply, who gives a fuck, dude? Like, I didn't get into... Like, all the government money in the world isn't going to make you funnier.
No,
that's not how this works. So there's this group of people, and it's like, whatever. You want to talk about going against the grain, I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but like... everyone's like, oh, we got to make it an art form, and then we'll get... And it's like, what are you going to... so you're going to have, a festival, and then there's going to be all these government-funded festivals with all these requirements about what you can and can't joke about, things you can't say. It's going to be bland. They're not going to book, true voices of, like, a new style of comedy or anything. They're going to go with, like, old favorites. It's going to end up being just for laughs veterans that get those jobs anyway. So... And I just feel like it's sad. I'm like... First of all, they called me, these people. I don't even know who they are. And we're like, we're part of the committee of people trying to raise funds. Would you consider donating your show's profits to us?
Ooh.
Right.
Hey,
click.
What's up?
Yeah, exactly. So I was like,
hey, man, can I borrow everything? Can I just take all your stuff?
You know how you worked your ass off for the last 2 years? Can I have that now? Trust me, I'll do more with it than you will.
Don't you believe in the cause?
Oh, my God. Well, it's also just like, what's happened to stand-ups? When did we start wanting the public to eat? Like, we used to hate the government, remember? That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
We spoke truth to power, and now we're like, we have some money, and so we can...
The court jesters, right?
Oh, my... Yeah.
Well, I have a big problem with that with music, too, I mean, this is a long conversation that I don't think we can get into,
right.
But about like, you know, if you have a recognized art form, then you're basically in the interest of making teachers, making comedy teachers, making music teachers,
right.
and categorizing the art form so that you can teach it to other people in the easiest way. And so anything that's new and
outside the model,
which are usually the best things,
of course,
the most overwhelming things for the audience, can't be defined, and therefore you don't learn them.
Right. And that's another thing too that drives me crazy is when comics kind of like they fancy themselves edgy. You know what I mean? They'll be like, "Oh, I got some jokes, and they might not be for everybody." Then it's like, "Oh, God sucks." or, yeah, good one. Yeah, you didn't get arrested. George Carlin did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't go to jail. Lenny Bruce did. Like those guys who had more edgy stuff even back then than these people are saying today. And they know today there are no consequences. Well, there are consequences for you say they do, but it's not for the stuff they're saying.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not edgy if you go after Trump.
No, of course.
You know what I mean? But they think they are. They're like, oh, yeah.
I think they're being edgy
against the president. You're like, I guess. I don't know. But
I think comedy has talking about like all the different ways that comedy is presented to the public now through late night talk shows, through Twitter, through memes, through Netflix specials, all this stuff. I think comedy's in a unique position of getting an enormous amount of feedback for what can be funny and what isn't funny.
Right.
Not to say what can't be funny, but I think the good comics are the ones that look at other people's mistakes when they did something that everyone like roasted them for, you know? Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, that can be funny. I'll figure out a way to make that funny, because anything can be funny, right?
Right. Like I saw a CBC article recently. We all know how funny CBC is. And they were like...
gut busting.
Yeah, exactly. And is Little Mosque on the Prairie still running? That was
I hope so.
That was a good one. Being Erica, that was a classic.
Yeah, wow.
Anyway, but they were like... It was like it was an opinion piece, but it was like, food allergy jokes are never funny under any circumstance. And my reaction is like, okay, gonna start writing some food allergy jokes. Yeah. Didn't have any before, but I'm sure I can prove that wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, Ricky Gervais in his most recent special did like 10 minutes on food allergies, and it was hilarious and ruthless about how like, oh, you're allergic to peanuts, so we can't have peanuts on the plane. I'm gonna bathe in peanut oil and all this stuff, right? Get on the plane, and when she starts like, what does he say? Something like, when she starts like convulsing, I'll go up and like rub my hands over, but act like I'm giving her CPR and stuff. Like, it was so rude, but it was hilarious. And it's obviously funny. A joke, but
that's right.
But I mean, I don't know. I don't really. It's so weird. Like I saw, like CBC, man. I'm worried about them. But there's government funding for you. But that's what happens to an industry when the government gives it money every year for no reason. Man, they had this thing. I don't even know them. I've never seen them. But it's like a white guy and a native guy. I think they're from out west. I think they're in Manitoba or somewhere. Anyway. The guy said like they're like a song comedy duo, and the guy says something. The white guy says something like, "This one's for you, this one's for me, this one's for the native with the STD," and then some activist writes this piece about, oh, you're trying to. The implication is that natives have STDs. When meanwhile, the guy on stage is native, and there's a joke earlier in the show where they talk about how he gets chlamydia or something, right? From traveling.
Yeah.
Sleeps with somebody and da-da-da.
Okay.
So it's like part of the show. It's a callback to an earlier joke from the show.
Which is good writing.
Right. But, and again, I don't even find that funny, but the fact that they run with these stories anyway, like anyone could have, if they did any fact checking, they could have just like corrected it and been like, oh, there's no case here. It was sort of like remember when that poster was up during the election, the provincial election here? And there was that black woman with the, and she's smiling, right? It was a cartoon drawing, and the sign said like free dental. You know what I mean? It's like if you vote, I can't even remember what party it was. If you vote us, whatever, free dental. Mm-hmm. Then CBC runs this article. Is this ad racist? And I couldn't even tell you what might be racist about it. I had no idea, right? Like I saw that.
So a poster of a black woman and it advertising free dental for this political party. Right. Someone thought that was. Yeah, racist.
So someone thought it was racist. So, and meanwhile, look, I'm a working class guy, man. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. What I saw was free dental. I didn't give a shit about the cartoon character.
But now you're a racist because you voted for free dental.
Yes, I forgot to vote this year. But anyway,
slips my mind.
But anyway, here's the crazy thing. So they write, is this racist and whatever, and then they deal with. So of course, the first chunk of the article too, because they kind of know not everyone's going to read the whole article anyway, is all about like how this other woman who thought it was racist, her perspective, and she's like, oh, they're saying that black people need dental work, and they're, it's this whole thing about like, oh, we can see your teeth, but we can't see your skin at night and shit. And again, not like that was not my interpretation. Anyways, then they find out it's a self-portrait of a friend of the woman who's running.
Oh wow!
So the woman who's running for MP got her friend to do a self-portrait. And CBC, if they had, if they were worth their salt as journalists, would do their fact-checking, which they did, and then you would go, oh, it's a self-portrait of a black woman? Well, we're not going to run that story. There's obviously bigger fish to fry. But they did anyway. You know what I mean? Like, they just want to keep this shit going. So
well, that's the stuff that gets talked about.
Right. Well, exactly. That's what,
And that's all news is.
Yeah.
And so
it's like if it bleeds, it leads, but now it's more like if it's racist or potentially,
it's racist,
sexist
then
or whatever,
the basis
awesome.
of the...
Not awesome, but it's like it's awesome for readership. But
yeah,
but like it's
you got to keep people talking, and that's a dangerous thing for the limbic system in humans, because you can just appeal to the most base separations between people.
Right, exactly. And but I'm hoping that we'll get through this. Like, I was having breakfast with this woman this morning, and we were chatting, and like, we were talking about it. And that's what she said. I give it 6 years. I think in 6 years we'll all see the pinholes in this logic. And
in that kind of PC logic.
Well, in the divisiveness of it, like that's clearly what it is.
Right, but it comes and goes, right? Yeah, it's almost like the
first wave was the late 80s, early 90s, and then went away for a bit.
Right, but I think it was before that too.
Oh yeah.
It was the term PC comes from Maoist China.
Oh really?
That's to be politically correct was to speak for the party at all times, and to be politically incorrect was to speak against the party. That's where it comes from. And I think it might just be a side effect of politics and political power. There's always going to be one party that uses some form of political correctness to get people to conform to their values and therefore want to vote for them, I think. So it might just be it might always be around.
There's a comic from...
You'll be dealing with it more than I will. I'll just be making 6, 7, 9 chords on the bandstand.
There's a comic from China who lives and works in Canada now, and he stays with me when he passes through Montreal and then plays a show, but he crashes with me. And he's a funny guy. So we're sitting around the table one night, and I was asking about China, and I was like, so what is it like? Like I was asking about Mao, because I was like, I know Mao's still like on a lot of... there's statues everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, is he still a revered figure? Like, he's obviously like the cat's out of the bag on that. And he was like, no, it's just more just like a ceremonial, it's just a heritage thing more than anything. But no, everyone kind of knows he was a shitty guy. Mm-hmm. No one actually looks up to him anymore. Blah, blah, blah. And I was asking about communism and how it works and stuff. And it was very funny. He goes, in China, we are not the communists. You in Canada are the communists. In China, we have no minimum wage. No minimum wage. Here, minimum wage.
Yeah.
In China, no free healthcare. That's communism.
Yeah.
In Canada, everybody taking coffee break. In China, we don't know what coffee break is.
Oh my God.
And he's like, we're the true, like this. We're like, we're like the, ground zero of capitalism.
Well, they came out of communism right into capitalism.
Right.
Without any of the documents from like John Stuart Mill and Andrew Jackson and all these people talking about freedom and individuality, and they came out of it. And it became like free for all capitalism, where if you didn't want to lower your prices so that you'd beat the sunflower seed salesman across the street, you just burn his fucking business down.
Right.
Yeah. So I heard. Shout out. I don't think sunflower seed salesmen are doing that in China now, but that's that's. Different worlds.
It's a different world,
I guess.
And he's a perfect, he's a man for his time and place, because he's like calling out funny things that he thinks about our culture, and because he's Chinese, no one's really you can't call the guy racist, what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's great, and he's a very funny comic, and he's a very hardworking comic too. He's always on the road. He Fang Shu, if you're out there, buddy, good luck, and you got a place to stay when he comes through again.
Yeah, sick. Well, man, on that shout out,
Yeah? Should we get in?
I think we should wrap this up.
I got a gig at M-Bar tonight.
Gig at M-Bar. Hey.
This will air 6 months after.
If you're living 3 weeks in the past, go see this guy tonight at M-Bar. And where can people find your stuff online, and where can they come see you?
I got some YouTube videos. I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still pretty new, so like it's just a home video camera without much, you know what I mean? Like
newer than I thought.
Cool. You guys got cool stuff going on here. I'm not real like
everything's
they're like home videos funny. But they're not bad. Beat the Winter Blues. That's a classic series.
Grinch in it?
Grinch in it's one
hilarious.
Of those. Yeah, classic. Instant classic.
I'd say so. And
then if you want to catch not just me, but lots of other comics, come every Friday to the Art Loft, Comedy at the Art Loft. That's on Saint Laurent Rochelle. We're on Facebook at Comedy at the Art Loft. We are on every Friday at 10:30. It's BYOB, $10.
It's fantastic. It's the best show in the city.
None of this pay what you can, comedy gobbledygook.
No, get your money.
You better have that $10.
Get your paper, kid. All right, man. Well, thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Take care.
You take care, too. Bye, everybody. Sick, bro.
Thanks, man.
Did it.
Showbiz, baby. Showbiz.
Gang.
Gang.
Let's make $1 million.